All right, so let's go ahead and start out with our lesson focus. Our title is To See or Not to See, Understanding Visual Information. All right, guys, our standard says to interpret information presented visually, orally, or quantitatively. In parentheses, it tells you what those quantities are, or some of that information that's presented is. For example, in charts, graphs, diagrams, timelines, animations, or interactive elements on web pages. So also being able to explain how the information contributes to an understanding of the text in which it appears. Here's your learning goal for today. I can explain how the information in a visual display enhances the reader's understanding of a text. That word enhances just means how does it add to it? How does it make your understanding of the text even better? So our essential question that we're going to be trying to answer throughout the lesson is, how does understanding visual information help me understand a text?
All right, so that leads us to our next day of instruction on this same standard that you guys were working on last week. The reason we want to, or we're going to revisit this standard is because as I was grading or looking at some of your I've Ready work over the weekend, I noticed that some of us did not do as well as expected on this lesson, and that's okay, because a lot of times it's just that we need a little bit more practice with something. So with that said, if you have not finished the lesson, hopefully this will help you through. If you have already finished it and you did not receive a passing grade, no worries. I will reassign the lesson to you to give you another chance at doing well. For today, this is going to be assignment number 2 under the assignment number 2 tab. Make sure you complete the assignment for this particular lesson, and we'll talk about that more at the end. All right, so let's jump right in. Today, you're going to watch me model how to do or how to complete this standard. Our title of our article for today is Features of the Ocean Floor by Corrine Rather. So the very first thing you want to do is kind of examine your diagrams before you step right in. So if we look at the one here at the top, that word says seamount, and there's a little arrow here showing you what the seamount is. You have ocean ridge, it's those little ridges you see here. And then of course on the bottom, we have some labels. First of all, the first label here says continent. Then you have this little kind of elevated or higher up ridge here says continental shelf. Then as it goes down some, gets deeper, it says continental slope, abyss, which is kind of deep, abyssal plain, and the ocean trench. All right. And it says that these are the features of the ocean floor. So if you were to take a nice dive with your family all the way to the bottom of the ocean, this is what you will be encountering. So let's jump right in, and we're going to read about the features of the ocean floor. We got one thing from the visual. Let's see what the text tells us. All right, it says, picture this. You're in a submarine right next to a continent. Looking down, you see a part of the ocean floor called the continental shelf. So when I look over to the side, you see your continental shelf. It's the second label right here. It says now head out to sea. The ocean floor drops away to form the continental slope. So you got the continental shelf right here, the second label, and it says the ocean floor drops away. And you can see it dropping downward. So that's what forms the continental slope. Now it says you might pass through a range of seamounts or volcanoes rising from the ocean floor. In time, you'll reach the abyssal plain. Here we have your abyssal plain again, which is a dark realm with deep valleys called trenches. And here you see that. Finally, you might encounter long, snake-like ocean ridges that rise from the ocean floor. They connect to form a long chain of underwater mountains around the planet. All right, so let's now look at visual or diagram number 2. So this says highest and deepest places on Earth. So the first thing you want to notice is over here to the left is miles. So these numbers represent miles. All right. So the first thing here, I noticed in this particular diagram, it shows here a visual which is labeled Mount Everest. And there's a really big, deep drop here. But then, and that's showing going downward. But then if I look at it the other way, which kind of looks like a mountain here, that's labeled the Mariana Trench. So let's now read paragraph number 2, and we're going to see how these two things complement each other, just like we just did up here. So it says the deepest ocean trench in the world is the Mariana Trench. Here we have the Mariana Trench in the Pacific. It is one of the most difficult places to reach on Earth. It is so deep that if Mount Everest, one of the tallest mountains in the world, were picked up and put at the bottom of the trench, the mountain would still be covered with water. So now I understand my diagram a little bit more. This visual here, when it says Mount Everest, it's just showing you what would happen if this particular structure, if this mountain, were actually placed inside of the Mariana Trench. It shows you how deep down it would go. So with that said, let's answer some comprehension questions over to the side here. First, it says, what are the two kinds of underwater mountains that are described in the article? Well, here I know the two types are seamounts, which here, when it says you might pass through a range of seamounts or volcanoes rising from the ocean floor. So seamounts is one type. And then it talks about your ocean ridges. When it says, finally, you might encounter long snake-like ocean ridges that rise from the ocean floor. And I know that mountains rise up. So, seamounts and ocean ridges. Question number 2 says, how does the article say the ocean ridges are arranged on Earth? Here, if I notice, it says in the text that they connect to form a long chain of underwater mountains around the planet. So my answer would be they connect up into a mountain chain that goes around the planet. Easy peasy so far, right? It's just reading and context clues. Question number 3 says, what is the deepest trench? What is the deepest trench in the ocean called? The Mariana Trench. It tells me right here in paragraph number 2, the deepest ocean trench in the world is the Mariana Trench in the Pacific. So that leads us to our chart. All right, so we're supposed to use information about the diagram that we just saw to answer questions. On the left side, in the left column, it says what the text says. Then it says what the diagram shows. So we're going to start out with the abyssal plain. What the text says is that in time, you'll reach the abyssal plain, a dark realm with deep valleys called trenches. But when we look at the features of the ocean floor, we notice that the ocean trenches are the deepest places on the ocean floor, deeper than the abyss. We know that because we can look at the visual here. And as you can see, the ocean trenches go down a little bit further or deeper than anything else on that diagram. So then when we go down to the Mariana Trench, what the text says about that Mariana Trench is that it's the deepest trench in the world. It says the deepest ocean trench in the world is the Mariana Trench. That's what the text says. But when we think about or look at the diagram, it says highest and deepest places on Earth. The Mariana Trench is about 7 miles deep, and Mount Everest is only about 5.5 miles high. So the Mariana Trench being 7 miles deep. I'm sorry, I meant to go backwards. Let's look at that. 7 miles deep, the Mariana Trench. You can see that on the diagram there. And then it says Mount Everest being about 5.5 miles high. So you can see this from the diagram here. That exactly what the text explained to us, that's what we put on the chart, right? Now, let's look at our short response, and we're going to respond to the writing prompt, making sure we take care of all parts. So it says, how do the diagram, graph, and text work together to give you information about the Mariana Trench? Use evidence from each to support your response. Here is your answer, or a sample answer. Now, if it asks us how do these things work together, how do the diagram and the graph work together to give you information about specifically the Mariana Trench? Using evidence, the sample response says the text explained that trenches are deep valleys in the abyssal plain. So right away, I'm telling you what I received or the information I got from the text. Then it says the features of the ocean floor diagram. So now I'm going to talk about the diagram because I want to talk about how the text and these things work together to give me information. So it says the features of the ocean floor diagram showed that the trenches are the deepest places on the ocean floor, deeper than the abyss. Well, we saw that when we looked at that diagram and saw that those trenches were a little bit deeper down on the diagram. The text also stated that the deepest trench in the world is the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean. That's what the text said. Then it says the highest and deepest place on Earth graph. So now I'm taking care of the information on the graph. So the highest and deepest places on Earth graph show just how deep the Mariana Trench is, which is about 7 miles. The diagram and graph gave more details about the information in the text. And everything that I explained here, we can see in both the text, or we get from both the text, and we get that information from the diagrams. So in this case today, guys, these two pieces of information complement each other. And we want to take what we can see in the actual visual interpretations of the information and what we read in the written interpretation of the information. And we put those things together to help us understand the topic a little bit better. Now, with that said, today you're going to first go to your Files tab, and you're going to access the article, which is titled Going Down, Down, Down. You're going to read that article, and then you will have about 8 or 9 questions under assignment number 2. You're going to answer those questions on the form. And when you complete it, go ahead and click Turn In, and then go ahead and move to assignment number 3. Like I said, this is just a little bit of extra instruction and a little bit of extra practice to help you guys get used to working this particular standard. Because as with any other standard, a lot of times it's just practice makes perfect. If you need to, when you get ready to answer some of the open response questions for your assignment for today, just refer back to this YouTube video and it'll help you understand how to make sure you're looking at everything, you're using the information and combining what you read and what you see in the diagrams and graphs. And then just make sure you're answering every single part of the question. All right. Hope you guys got some good information out of this video, and happy learning on this marvelous Monday morning.